Hello everyone, thank you all for attending this webinar. It is our first webinar from a series of three webinars that we've scheduled for this spring. And this first one is dedicated to JSON and the JSON support that we have in Oxygen. Before we begin, a few useful information. Yes, this webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be available both on the webinar's event page as well as on our YouTube channel. You don't have to wait until the end to ask questions. You can ask questions at any time, either by using the questions panel available in the webinar interface, as well as on Twitter. We will look on Twitter. So if you want to write some questions there, just use the hashtag OxygenXML so we can see them. So without further ado, I will pass the control to my colleague Octavian Nadolu, who is the project manager that was in charge with overseeing the development of JSON support inside Oxygen. Octavian?
Okay, thank you, Alex. Hello, everybody. My name is Octavian Nadolu, and we'll discuss in this presentation about JSON, about editing JSON, validating JSON against the JSON schema, about querying or transforming JSON files, also converting or connecting to a database and editing JSON files there. Of course, we'll focus on the new additions that we have in Oxygen. In the latest version, we improve a lot this support in Oxygen. So here is an overview of the presentation. We'll start with the editing support that you can use for JSON document. Then we'll see how you can validate a JSON against a JSON schema or check if the JSON document is well formed. Then we'll apply some querying and transformation using XSLT, XQuery, and XPath. And we'll see how you can convert JSON documents and maybe some limitations that are in these conversions, and of course some future plans. And maybe you'll get some questions and ideas from you for the future improvements on JSON. So JSON, it's a lightweight data interchange format. It's used especially with JavaScript, but not necessary. It's a standalone language, and it's a structured language. It's similar with XML, but it says that it's more compact. JSON schema, it's a vocabulary that allows you to define the structure of the JSON documents and allows you to validate JSON instances and check if they are conform with the specification. And you can use also JSON schema to provide, for example, content completion and edit your JSON documents according to a specification. Let's start with the editing support. So, of course, you can edit JSON documents in a text mode, but you can have some visual modes like a grid mode or other type of visual mode to edit the documents, and I'll show you some examples. Then we'll discuss about an outline view that will show you the structure of the JSON document and allows you to easily see where you are in the document, how you can associate a schema and a JSON schema with a JSON document, and how you can use the content completion to insert content and insert valid content in your JSON documents. So let's start with text and grid editing mode. So in Oxygen we have this text mode that allows you to edit the document directly as a text, but you have a visual mode, which is the grid mode, and I will show you just a moment in Oxygen. So I switch to Oxygen, and I have here a JSON document. This one is the personal JSON, and this contains some information about some person. So it has an array of persons, and we see that we have different syntax highlighting for this JSON property and JSON value. You have this tag matching, so you can go to the matching tag and see where you are in the where the tag is closed and where the object is closed for your document. You have also different actions on the contextual menu. We'll discuss about them later. You can format the document. Then you can switch also to grid mode. And here you can see the document in a tabular form. And this allows you, for example, to change the columns, and then all the email properties from your JSON document will be now before the name. So if we go to here to the document, we see that now we have the email before the name. So if you want to do such modifications in the document, or maybe you want to add a new person, you can easily duplicate one of the existing persons and then just type the content here. Say, okay, this is a new person and this is a new email. So now if I switch to Oxygen, to the text page, I have this new worker here, but I have also the to worker. So I just duplicated that information and I can just change the content. So you can benefit of this grid page, and you have a lot of actions here. You can also paste content from an Excel file here, and you'll have the content added in your JSON document. The format and indent in JSON, which I think it's very important to have a JSON document that can be read. We have support to format this type of documents. You can set a different indent size, but you can also use indent size 0 if you want to compress the JSON file and save it somewhere compressed. And I'll show you how you can do this. I have here the same file, but you see that now it looks very ugly. It's hard to read this document because you don't know where the properties are, or the web objects are closing exactly. So you can use these format and indent actions from the toolbar, and now you have a much nicer JSON file, so you can easily see where to modify the document, or you can read its content more easily. As I told you, you can also change the indent size. For this, you need to go to Options, Preferences, and in the editor format indent page, you can set, for example, the indent size to 2. And then if I format it again now, I have 2 white spaces added as an indent. And I can also use this indent size and set it to 0. And now if I format my content, my JSON file, it's on a single line, and I can use it, for example, to upload it somewhere and be like a compressed JSON file. We have also folding support for JSON, so you can collapse or expand parts of the JSON file, so you can easily read some content or edit some content in the JSON file. And we have actions that allows you to collapse all folds or some of the folds. I will show you an example. So let's consider you want to edit this document and you want to focus on this new person that you added. So you can say, okay, I want to collapse all other folds, and now you have only this fold available, and you can edit its content. Or you can use the expand all, or you can use the collapse child folds, and then maybe collapse all child from an array, and then focus on the array items and expand some of them that you want to see. We have also support to search and refactor, and for this you can use the find replace dialog, and also some in-place actions that will allow you to modify the content of the document, the manage highlighted content action. I will show you how you can do this. So let's go to Oxygen and expand the content. So you can use the find dialog by pressing Ctrl F, and then I can easily find an email here if I type it correctly. And I can use the find all action to find all the occurrences of the email, and then using the manage highlighted content, I can change all emails from my document, and you see that I have an in-place editing, and I can say email address maybe. And then pressing enter, you'll have the modification made in the entire document. And I can press undo, and I'll have the modifications back made. And you can use, for example, if you want to change this email address in all your document, and maybe you change your company email address, then you can use this action, the find all action, also from using the Ctrl Shift F, and then manage highlighted content and modify all, and maybe instead of Oxygen XML you have it like oxygen.com or something else. The JSON outline view allows you to see the structure of the document, which is important to know where you are in your document. Such a view will help you to understand the structure and see, maybe find some properties. It is synchronized with the editor, and it allows you to also find properties by filtering, and presents also the errors directly in the outline. Let's see an example here. So this is the outline view in the left, and we see that we have different colors. For the array is green, and for objects is blue. Then you can easily select properties from here, and are selected in the editor, but I can also go and click on some of the properties and or values from the JSON, and will be selected in the outline view. I can search for a property. Let's say I want to find an email, and I'll get all the emails from my document. And also, even if your structure is not well formed, so if I delete some property, some content from the document, and this makes it not well formed, even in this case, the structure of the outline is presented. So it's very robust, this structural outline view. And as I told you, you have also the errors presented in the outline. So if an error happens, you can easily spot it also here, and then click it and go in the document. Let's discuss now about the JSON schema and associating the JSON schema with the JSON document. So The JSON schema is very important because it defines the structure of the JSON document, and there are different ways that you can use to associate the JSON schema with your document. So you can associate it directly in the document, or you can associate it through some options. And in Oxygen, these options are called validation scenarios. So are some options associated with the current file. And I will show you how you can do this. Let's undo the modification in our file. So one way to associate a JSON schema with this document is by using this associate schema action. That will allow you to choose a schema, and in my case is this personal schema. And you can associate it using a relative path or directly the absolute path. I'll use the relative path. And we see that here we have a new property added, $schema, and with the path to the relative path to the JSON schema, I can use the control click to open this schema. So now my document it's validated, and the content completion will also use this associated JSON schema. Another way to associate the JSON schema with the document is by using the validation scenario. So if you don't want to have this association in the file, you can go to the validate toolbar button, and here you can configure a validation scenario. And I'll use new validation scenario for the current document, which is a JSON document, is detected automatically. I'll use the default validation engine. And here I need to specify the schema, which is the personal schema that I added earlier. So now, even if I don't have this association in the file, I'll have the schema associated with my document, and the file will be validated against this schema. So if I make some modification here that are not valid, like having an IDs instead of an ID that is not defined in my schema, I will be warned. If you have both associated in the schema, in the file, the schema associated directly in the file and in the validation scenario, then the one from the validation scenario will be more powerful. So this you need to remember. If you want to check what schema is associated with your file, you can also use this open associated schema action from the toolbar, and will take you to the associated schema. So now we have a schema associated with our JSON document. We'll discuss about the validation later, and let's start now with the content completion based on the JSON schema. So if you have a JSON schema, then you could have also some valid proposal based on the structure defined in your JSON schema. And you can have also documentation from the JSON schema and understand what each property does or what values you can insert in some context. We have also support for code templates. Let's go back to our schema. So I'll tell you some things about this schema. We define here a personal property, and inside the personal property you see that we have a person which has a type, and this person type defines an ID, a name, an email, and each of those properties have also types defined. So the ID should be should have the length maximum 20 and should be a string. Then the name should contain a family and a given, which are required, and then the name has this schema, so it should be a string and has a pattern that should be respected. And for the link also you have some subordinates or manager. So if I want to insert a new person now in my document, this will be done according to the schema associated with my JSON file. So if I press here enter, automatically it will detect that here you can insert an object. So I need to insert a new person, which is an object, and I get also the documentation from the schema that tells me that this is information about a person. Then if I press again enter, I want to change back the formatting because it's 0 now and I don't like it. Format it. Okay, and then if I press here again content space to invoke the content completion, I'll get the properties that can be inserted in the current context, which are the ID and then the value of the ID, and I can say new, then I'll get the next one, which is the name, and in the name it's an object, and in the name I can insert a family, and let's say a name. This is an worker, and before the family I can insert the given, which is new, and after the name I can insert an email, which is new Oxygen XML, and a link with a manager, and so on. So now when I edit the schema, I always get valid proposal, and I also get this this information about the properties that can be inserted based on the documentation from the schema. So if I go to the documentation of the name, we see that it says that this is a name property and specifies the family and the given for this person. And for the ID is the ID property and specifies the required ID for the person. So you get, if you annotate your schema, you'll get also information in the instance when you are editing it. And also define code templates. So if you want to speed up a little bit your work, for example, as in my case, insert easier this person, I can create a code template that will insert the person directly, and then I'll just type the information, the values from the person. So, for example, let's say I want to create a code template for a person. I'll copy an existing one, and I'll go to options, preferences, and here I'll say search for code templates, and I can create a new code template. I can set a name, let's say person, and I can add also a description, a new person. You can set also a shortcut. Then you need to specify for which editor is used, for the JSON editor in my case, and the content that will be inserted will be this one. And instead of one, I'll delete it to insert this content later. This is the content that it's should be inserted for the new person. So I can press, it's already existing a new template with a person. Let's see, person new. Okay. And Now, if I want to insert a new person, I can press Ctrl-Shift-T. It's Ctrl-Shift-Space. Sorry, Ctrl-Shift-Space. It's for new. And then here you have already defined some code template, so you can insert an array or an object. And we have also this code template that I've created with a new person. This is the description, and this is the content that will be inserted. So if I press enter, I'll get this person inserted. I'll format it to look better, and then I get just type the content. Let's say I want to insert this new person, and I'll just type the content that I need in my person. So you can use this type of code templates to speed up your work, and maybe if you have a structure that will be inserted, you can define some code templates and will help you. Next, let's go to validating JSON documents. So you want to make sure that your JSON documents are well-formed, and these are well-formed according to the JSON specification, and are also valid and valid against a JSON schema that you define. You also want to validate JSON schemas according to the JSON schema specification. And in Oxygen, we support JSON schema draft 4, draft 6, and draft 7. You can also validate multiple files or multiple schemas from project using a batch validate action. Let's start with the check well-formedness. So in Oxygen, there is a well-formedness scanner that checks if the JSON document is valid according to the JSON specification that you can find on json.org. And it also automatically checks for problems when you type or when you make a mistake. But you can also use this action and invoke it manually. Let's switch to our file. I'll close these samples. And we have here a document that contains some problems. And these are already marked in the document. This is because I have a validation scenario configured, which is this one. If I remove this validation scenario, you see that the problems are gone. So if you don't have a schema, the problems will not be reported. But if you don't have a schema and you make modification and you make your document not well formed, like deleted this curly bracket here, this problem will be reported anyway. So even if the schema is not associated, and you say that you need here to correct this problem and add the curly bracket. If you configure a validation scenario, as I did here, and associate this personal schema, then you'll have also the problems reported by the JSON schema validator. And we see that here it says that a given it's required. We have only a family, so I can insert also a given, and then it says that the name should be has a minimum length equal to 1, so I need to add some information in the name. Then I have here another schema problem. It says that the email is not valid. So this email, if you go to the schema, it says that has this format email. So here it's not a valid email, right? I need to correct it. Here we have another problem, and this time it's for the family, and it says that the pattern is not matched. So you need to set a correct name. and here also a valid email address. So you can make sure that your document is valid, and you can define your structure using this JSON schema. Here the name is too long. Maybe you don't want to have longer name in your document or other type of constraints. So you've seen that you need to associate a schema with a JSON document, a JSON schema with a JSON document if you want to have this validation. This validation is made automatically as you type. You've seen that I corrected the problem and the problem disappears, but also if I type something that is not correct, automatically I'm notified in place that I didn't add the correct samples, the correct email. You can also use the manual validation, and the errors will be presented in a results view. So let's undo my modification here. And if I use this validate action from here, I'll get the errors presented in the results view. And now, if I correct some of the problems, this errors view will be automatically updated, and I will know how many errors I have in my document. If you don't have an associated schema, let's remove this association from here. You can also use the validate with action from the toolbar. And here you can specify the schema that you want to validate with. In my case, the personal schema. And I'll get the errors presented in the results view, and I can go to check them. But if I make a modification in the document now, after I correcting or I will make a modification, the validation errors will disappear. So you need to associate the schema in order to always have the errors checked, like this. We have support also to validate JSON schemas files. We have a JSON schema error scanner, and this is validated according to the JSON schema specification. As I told you, we support draft 4, draft 6, and draft 7, which is the latest specification, draft 7. We have also a well-formedness checker for the JSON schema. And let's go to our schema. So the JSON schema version is specified in the schema property. You see that here we have an URL that says this is a JSON schema draft 7. So this schema will be validated according to the JSON schema specification draft 7. You can, if here it's draft 4 or draft 6, then it will be validated according with that specification. If a schema doesn't have this property added, it will be automatically just checked for well-formedness. So now if I make a modification in my JSON schema, let's say I set a wrong type here. I think I already have a validation scenario configured. I'll tell you later about the validation scenario. So if you have this problem, and you don't have the schema specified, the validation will say that everything is okay. So it will just check if the document is well formed. So if I make a well formed error, it will tell me that. But if I have this problem, like specifying an unknown type for the schema, it will not check this. So you need to add this version here, the schema version, in order to specify that this document, this JSON document, is a schema. If you don't want to specify it, or you have a, let's say you have a schema that doesn't have this specified and you don't want to change it, let's say you have it like this with the schema property removed, you can use a validation scenario and you can configure one and validate the current file, but instead of the default engine, you can use the JSON schema validator this time. So this will automatically consider that the current document is a JSON schema and will be validated according to the JSON schema specification. But in this case will be JSON schema specification draft 4. So we'll use the default one. We'll consider that is the less. And now it will check different problems like I told you the type, or if I make a reference that is not correct, or stuff like this. You have also content completion. It's not so good as the content completion for the JSON documents, but it can be used and it can be improved. You can also validate multiple JSON files according to a schema, or according to the associated scenario, or according to the schema associated in the instances. For this, you need to go to the project. So you need to have a folder here linked, or select a folder that you want to validate, or maybe just some files that you want to validate. Let's consider I want to validate these ones. And from the contextual menu, I can select the validate action, and will be automatically validated against the associated schema. But I can use also the validate with action if I want to specify a schema that I want to validate with. And I can also specify a validation scenario to validate all these files with a specific validation scenario. In my case, I'll just validate it with the scenario with the existing associations, and I'll get the results in the results view. And you see that for each file, can go to the problems, and I can check them and correct them if I want. Then let's discuss about querying and transforming JSON documents. So of course, you can query or transform it with JavaScript if you are on the web, but you can use also XPath if you want to query, or use XSLT if you want to transform it, or process it, or use XQuery. And I will show you some interesting examples how we can do this. We can start with the XPath support. So we have support to execute XPath against JSON documents, and you can use it to execute it on one document, or on a set of documents that you define, or on the entire project. We have also content completion, and we provide the properties from the document, so we can easily type this XPath expression. And I will show you an example. Let's close these files. We have here a new folder, and this time it's with some books. It's some information about some books with the title and the technology and some images. And I can execute an XPath expression from the XPath toolbar. For example, let's consider that I want to get all the technologies defined in my books JSON file. So here I can press / and I can say that I want to get books, and then I want to get the book property, and from the book property I want to get the technology. Then I can enter, and I'll get in the results view all the technology of the books defined in my file. So I can run this XPath expression and get the information in the results view. How this is done? This JSON document, it's automatically converted to XML when you want to execute an XPath expression, and then the locations are mapped back in the JSON file. So it's something that is done behind. Yes, XPath it's a language for querying XML files, but you can use it also for querying these JSON files, and it's very powerful. You have a lot of functions that can be used to process your content. You can execute this XPath expression also from the XPath toolbar. So I can say, okay, I want to switch to XPath toolbar, and I'll get the XPath expression here in this view. And here I can type more complex XPath expressions. I don't know, let's say I want to get the image description. So from the book, I will say that I want to get the image, and from the image, I want the description, and then I can run this and get all the description of the books. Then I can say, okay, I want only some part of the description, so I can say I want to make a substring from the text that is in the description, and I want to see only, I don't know, 20 or 10 characters. And I can run it again, and I'll get only the 10 characters from the description. So using this XPath builder, you can create more complex XPath expressions. There is also an action that you can use it in the contextual menu that will allow you to get the XPath expression of the current property. So you can use this copy XPath expression from here, and if I paste it in the XPath toolbar, I'll get the XPath expression. You see that here I have a JSON node added. I will tell you later about this. This is because my JSON document cannot be converted directly to an XML without adding a new tag that is called JSON here. In some cases you can add it, in some cases you cannot add it. Then I can run this XPath expression, and it takes me to the location, but I can make it also more generic by removing the index of the book, and then I'll get all the descriptions. So if you don't know how to create an XPath expression, you can use this action, and also you can use the XPath update.current move, and it will get you the XPath expression as you go through the document. It will say, okay, you are on books, book technology, or you are on this property, and you can run it to get all the similar properties from your document. You can also use XSLT if you want to transform JSON documents. And in XSLT 3.0, new functions were added, especially the JSON document and the JSON to XML function that will allow you to process JSON documents. We added some templates in Oxygen that will help you to create these style sheets for JSON documents. And you can create a transformation scenario and process these documents using XSLT. And I'll show you some examples how to create an HTML from a JSON document information, or how to get information maybe in other formats using XSLT. Let's close these files. So we have here, I'll create a new style sheet. I'll use the new file. And if I search for XSLT, we see that we have these two templates, the XSLT for JSON and the XSLT for JSON with this conversion to XML. I will show you this one by processing the XSLT document directly. So this style sheet has a parameter which is the input, where you need to specify the file that you want to process, the JSON document in our case. And they have a template which is an XSL initial template. So you don't need an input, because the input will be this parameter. You don't need to specify other input. Then we use this function to process the document, the JSON document function, and we'll apply a template for the result of the document, which is a map. And for each map, I will just print the content. So I will just say, okay, print the content of the document in the output. So let's create a transformation scenario for this document. I will move it in other place here, and let's rename it and say, I don't know, process JSON. Then I'll create a transformation scenario, and for this you need to go to this toolbar action, create transformation scenario, and I'll say new XSLT transformation, and here I'll process the current XSL, and I need to specify the input, which is the JSON file. In my case, I want to process the books JSON document. So I'll just type here books.json, right? So this is the input document. Then I'll press OK. And as a result, let's say I want to generate an HTML file, and I will say result document.html, and I will open in the system application, and then click OK, and I can apply this transformation scenario. It's opened in a different, I get this output, the result document, which is very ugly, but it's the information from my JSON document. So it's all the text from the JSON document. And now I can make this look nicer. I can, for example, I can create an HTML, and then in the body process each book from the JSON document using this question mark to access the properties from my JSON document. So I'll process each book from my document, and then for each book I'll print the title and the author, right? Let's copy these two new templates and replace the one existing, and run again the transformation. It's opened. And now I have the document, but now I have the titles and the author presented in the HTML, which is better, right? But I can do more, and have another one, have a template that process the content of the book, and for each book it can present an image, then an anchor. So it's a table created it's an HTML table created from the content that it's in the JSON document. I'll copy this content and replace this template. And now if I run it again, I'll get this result, which is much better. So I have a JSON document converted into an HTML, not necessarily the data from the JSON document generated as an HTML. So you can process the content of the JSON document in this way using the JSON document function, and you can generate, for example, other JSON document, or you can generate XML or whatever you want. You can collect data from a JSON document. Okay. Then you can use also XQuery to transform and query JSON documents. You can use it directly from the editor, but we have also an XQuery XPath builder. Let's switch to Oxygen and see an example also for XQuery. I will close these files. And we have these books XQuery file here. And we see that also here we have an external parameter defined external variable that needs to be specified in our case from the validation from the transformation scenario. Then you use this JSON document function to process the document, and we'll filter the document to get only the XML technologies books. And for each book that has this XML technology, we'll present the author and the title. And the result will be also a JSON document. So I'll create a transformation scenario also for this this XQuery and say XQuery transformation scenario this time. And here in the parameters, I need to specify also the document URI, which is books.json. And in the output, I know that I will have a result JSON. So I'll say result.json. I want to save it as a JSON file and open it in the editor. Then I will apply this transformation, and we see that we got only the author and the title from my books file. So if I make a modification here, for example, and change one of the technologies for this file and run the query again, I'll get only 2 books now. So I can process the document easy with using this XQuery. As I told you, you can use the XQuery XPath builder also to run XQuery. You need to select the processor here. Let's consider we select Saxon PE, and then I have another example here. This time the output it's an XML. It's an XML. I'll copy this content and paste it in my XQuery builder and run it, and we see that it processes the JSON book. So and this time presents the books with the technologies that is XSL, and creates an XML with the book and the title and the author and an ID. So you can use XQuery to create different scenarios and process the content. The content can be also from a database. we have also support to edit JSON document from a database, or to open it and make modifications. Also, you can query and transform using XQuery and XSLT directly from a database. And I will show you an example. I'll close these files. Switch to the database perspective because I already created here a connection. It's a MarkLogic database, and I have these files, the books added in the MarkLogic, and you see that if I open these files from the MarkLogic, it is open by double clicking. It's opened in the editor. I can pretty print it. So in MarkLogic it will be saved without the white spaces, but I can pretty print it if I want to look at the JSON file. I have the outline here that will help me to see the content of the document. And as I told you, you can use XSLT and XQuery to process this content directly from the database. And if I go to the books XQuery, let's say, I can create a transformation scenario that will process the document from the database. I already created one here. The only difference is from the one that we created earlier is that it has this document URI specified like this. So it processes the books JSON from the MarkLogic database. And if I process this, you see that I get the content, the three books with the title and the author. And if someone, for example, changes the technology, let's say that this technology will be XSL, and save the document in the MarkLogic database, then if I run again the query, I'll get the results with the two books. So you can use also our support, our database support. I didn't get into many details about creating connections, but you can find the support that we provide for the database and the database connectivity in our user manual, or if you want to, you can contact us, and you can open these JSON files directly from there. You can edit them, you can validate them, you can query and transform if you want. Now let's discuss about converting JSON documents, converting to XML, and converting XML to JSON, about batch conversion, and about the online converter that we provide. So as I told you, in the JSON to XML conversion, there are some limitations, and also for the XML to JSON, we provide this support to convert JSON to XML and XML to JSON based on the JSON library, JSON.org library. So it's according to their conversion. I will show you an example, and I will tell you also the limitations of the conversion. So let's consider I have this personal file that you've seen earlier, and you can go to tools, and here you have this JSON to XML action that will allow you to convert a file and specify the output. In my case is the personal XML file, and then if I press convert, I'll get this result. I'll put it side by side to see the result. So we see that the personal property was converted to a personal element, and for each item from the array, a person was created, and then you have this information added as elements in the XML file. And you can convert also this XML file to JSON. Let's say XML to JSON, and I will select the person, and I'll create a person new JSON. So now it's converted back, so it looks similar with the one that we converted from JSON to XML. There are also some limitations in this conversion, as I told you. So you've seen that in XPath we had this JSON root added when we created these XPath expressions. This is because sometimes when you convert the JSON document to XML, if you don't have a property like a root or a property and you have multiple properties on the first level, then when you convert it to XML, you need to add a root, right? Otherwise, it will not be valid. So in this case, if I want to convert this JSON to XML, we'll see that a JSON root was added, and then the properties were added as elements inside the JSON. So this is why sometimes a JSON element will appear in XPath, because you need to create a valid JSON document. Another limitation will be for arrays. Also in this case, if you have an array of arrays, you need to, when you convert it to XML, I will convert it to C to show you how it looks. You see that on the first level, the array was generated as an array element, and then for each item, because it's not a named array, you have an array tag created. Another, let's say another limitation with this conversion is when you have properties like this one with the $ID. $ID is not a valid XML tag name, so this will be escaped. So if I convert this JSON to XML, you see that the property is escaped, and the hexadecimal value is added in the tag name. But if I convert it back XML to JSON, and I select this invalid name and say new, we know to escape it back. So if you are converting forth and back from XML to JSON and from JSON to XML, we correct the problem when you get back with XML. So there are some limitations. I think there are also other on the XML. For example, if you have attributes in XML, this will be converted to properties in JSON. So you'll not know that these were attributes or not. So if I convert this JSON XML to JSON with the attributes, we see that the attributes of the person were generated as property. So you don't have any information that this was an attribute in the XML document. So in the conversion, you can have this limitation that you need to know. You can also use the batch converter to automatically convert multiple documents to XML or from XML to JSON. This is an add-on, and you can install it from our application. You can find more information about this add-on in the user manual. But I will show you how you can use it. I'll close all the files first. So, for example, if you have, where is it? a set of files here, like this library, and you want to convert all these files, you can use this batch conversion action from the project. You have the action also available in the tools menu, and you can convert also from here JSON to XML and XML to JSON. I'll use it from here. You can select the files or you can select the folder, and then you can use the batch converter and say JSON to XML. Let's say I want to generate to convert all these files to XML, and they will be generated in the output folder, and they will be opened in the editor. So you can have multiple conversions. There is also an online converter. It's available on our website, so you can use it freely. For example, let's copy some content from a JSON document. And if I go to this page, to the Oxygen XML JSON underscore converter, you get this online converter, and here you can choose a file that you want to convert, or you can paste some content in the JSON part. You'll have some syntax highlight, and you can convert this easy to XML. And of course, if you don't have the JSON, you can convert and you have the XML, you can convert it to JSON like this, and uses the same library that we are using in our application, the one from the json.org. Okay, so we got until the end. I'll tell you a few things about our future plans. Maybe if you have suggestions, or you can send us feedback if you have other ideas, and maybe we can schedule them in the future versions. So what we want to add in the next version, it's an instance generator that will allow you to generate samples files based on a JSON document schema. Then also to create a JSON template based on a JSON schema. We want to improve the content completion, also the schema editing support, and we are thinking also to creating a visual editor for the schema. We already created this JSON instance generator. It will be available in the next version, so now it's in development, and we hope to have it in the next version. That will be, I think, in a month or something. And I can show you how it works right now. So I have here on Oxygen is the current developed Oxygen, and we see that we have this schema is the personal schema, and in the tools menu I have here a generate samples JSON files, and here I can specify a schema that I want to use to generate instances. Then I can specify an output folder. Let's say I want to create an output with instances, a name like instance JSON, how many instances I want to generate. Let's say I want to generate, I don't know, 10. Then here we have some options how you want to generate the instance. You can generate with some default values, or you can generate random values based on the specified structure. You can specify to generate also the optional properties or just the required ones, also the additional properties. You can specify how the choice will be done. So in case you have one off or any off in your schema, which option to be taken, the first one or random from your document. So in my case, if I want to generate for my personal, I will get a person you see, with some information about the person with the name, link, email, and ID. But if I go to the edit here, we see that 10 instances were generated, and all of them are with similar information. So if I open them, you see that they are similar, but I can use the generator to generate the content random. So if I specify here that I want random content, and I'll overwrite all my files, you see that I get content generated random in my document based on the patterns or on the specified information from the schema. And all the documents are random now, with different numbers of persons in the document and so on. So this will be available in the next version. It's in the current development stream, and we hope to have it. Next, we want to have also this new template action. So when you create a new JSON file to specify a schema and automatically create the structure of the JSON file, maybe the required structure, or also add some optional content in the template that you create. I'll show you also an example of this one. So if you go to File, New, or if you create it from, let's say, from the project, New File, you specify, you select the JSON. Now you have also the possibility to customize the JSON. And here you can specify a schema. I'll use also a personal schema. And when you create it, you'll automatically get the schema associated, and it will be validated according to the schema, and will get the required and optional content. And you just need to type the content that you want to have it in your document. So it's easier now when you create a new JSON, if you don't know how to insert the structure, to just generate the structure from the schema. I think we got until the end. So I'll give control to Alex, or maybe he can read some of the questions that were added during the webinar. Also, if you have questions, you can address them now. If we don't have time to answer all the questions, you'll get a follow-up email later. Also, you can send us feedback, and we'll be happy to answer to your feedback.
Thank you, Octavian. Thank you for all the useful information that you presented to us. We have quite a few questions, and I'll try to read some of them. I know we're running a bit late with this webinar. So someone is asking if he can use JSON schema 0.8 in Oxygen. Apparently, this version of JSON schema it's soon to be published. As it's not yet published, we don't yet support it, but as soon as it will be out, we will evaluate it and add support for it. Is it possible to see all the JSON validation errors in one spot as a report? Is another question. And the answer is yes, because in the problems view of Oxygen, in the contextual menu, you have actions to export the results as XML as well as HTML.
Yes.
Do you want to show that, Octavian?
I can show, yes. Well, I think so. If you validate a file or multiple files, you get the results here. Mm-hmm. But you have actions here that will say, okay, save the results as HTML or as XML. So you can save all the results and then process it later if you want.
Mm-hmm. Another question, can you convert XML schema to JSON schema? Unfortunately, no, not yet, but that's an interesting idea for the future, some future support. Let's see what else. How would you compare JSON schema validation versus XSD 1.1 functionality, especially the powerful business rules, the asserts that can be expressed with XPath? Octavian?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I've seen some topics and some discussions about this. Yeah, is the JSON schema is not so powerful as the XSD, let's say, but it's still developing, and I've seen some JSON schema based also on the schematron, which is also a powerful schema on the XML part, and a similar schema was created for the JSON, so you can define business rules. But right now it's not something standard, so I think in the future will be used.
Okay. Just a few words. I'll make myself presenter. So I want to also mention the future events that we are involved in. If you intend to follow SDC Summit, which will take place on May 5th till May 8th, then you'll have a chance to meet the Oxygen team there. We also have two interesting presentations that you can attend. How data applies to Docker as code paradigm, as well as some advices on how to maintain a healthy data project. The next webinar in the series is about Oxygen Content Fusion with emphasis on XML document collaboration. It's scheduled for May 8th. You can register for it if you want. Afterwards, on May 15, we have a webinar dedicated to data and markdown, how one can leverage the benefits and the strong points of each of these languages in a mixed project, let's say. And the last webinar from this spring is dedicated to how to get started with Oxygen, how to create projects and work with them, validate documents. So although it's named Getting Started with Oxygen, I'm sure that anyone can learn quite a few useful things from such a webinar, because Oxygen offers a lot of functionality, there are a lot of tips and tricks that my colleague Stephen will present. And there are also quite a few conferences following that. We'll be present at the Evolution of Technical Communication in Sofia, as well as at the Markup UK conference in London. We also sponsor Balisage, and we'll be present at LavaCon 2019 at the end of October in Portland, Oregon. So again, another chance to get to meet the Oxygen team and to see what presentation we'll have there. So thank you again for following this webinar. Thank you for your patience and your attention. Thank you, Octavian, for the wonderful things that you've done for JSON inside Oxygen. And I hope to see all of you at the next webinar. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.